Climate change on a global scale can lead to extreme consequences. A lesson the international community has gradually begun to learn, while each year, as of late, is declared hotter than the last, producing widespread droughts, massive wildfires, glacial melt, destructive storms, and deadly heat. Typically, climate change is a gradual process lasting many decades, if not longer. Looking back through the records, one instance of notable climate change still has many researchers scratching their heads. During an era called the Younger Dryas, around 12,800 years ago, give or take a century or two, or around the end of the last ice age, ice sheets the size of continents were melting more than ever before, and Earth was seeing a major warming period take hold. But then, something changed. Global temperatures took a nosedive of 10 to 18 degrees Fahrenheit, and once again, the Earth and its inhabitants found themselves back in a glacial period. This was a climatic plunge that took only a few decades or less to bring about another 1,300 years of near ice age conditions, reversing the warming period that had ended it. But why? Many theories exist. A popular one claims rapid glacial retreats cause meltwater to reach the oceans, disrupting major climate-controlling currents to halt. A credible explanation that is hard to argue against, as we know that rapid cooling and desalination of the oceans can indeed disrupt vital currents cycling warm and cold waters that help to stabilize the climate. And yet, there exists another theory that posits an explanation which is far more catastrophic in nature, possibly explaining further the direct cause of the proposed rapid glacial melt. This is the hypothesis of the Younger Dryas Impact, a story so devastating that if one day proven true, would open up an entirely new, incredible chapter in the history of humankind and its survival on this planet, potentially creating a true horror in history. "12,800 years ago, around 10,700 BC, Earth was a very different place. The total human population was only 1 to 5 million people on the planet, and if we were to take a median average of that at 2.5 million, it would equal to around the total population of Houston, Texas in 2022, for reference. Additionally, the dinosaurs were a distant memory, and the animal kingdom became dominated by the megafauna, categorized as large mammals weighing over 90 pounds. Animals such as the Diprotodon in Australia, a wombat-like behemoth weighing over 7,000 pounds. A few other examples include the cave bear in Europe, the American cave lion, and of course, the woolly mammoth. Life was hard. Following migrations from the African continent into the northern hemisphere, early humans found themselves at the mercy of brutally cold temperatures. But due to the evolutionary development of larger brains over the millennia, ingenuity took hold, with the first sewing needles being crafted between 30 and 20,000 years ago, allowing humans to adopt tailored clothing. A huge step up from when they were simply draping animal hides over themselves to battle the elements. Humans were still very much hunter-gatherers during this era, with the time of the proposed cosmic impact of the Younger Dryas being when the first evidence appeared for agricultural activity. But with most meat-providing mammals being at least roughly the same size as your average human in many cases, hunts were dangerous, given that the hunters would need to get very close to use their weapons, sometimes requiring them to leap onto a prehistoric animal's back in order to deliver the killing blow. According to the explanation of a possible world-changing scenario in history, presented as the Younger Dryas Impact hypothesis, humankind in the prehistoric animal kingdom had no idea what horrors awaited them as a cosmic visitation appeared from the heavens. A comet, with recent estimates putting its size at 60 miles in diameter, may have entered our solar system on a collision course with Earth. A heavenly body of that size, if it were to impact Earth today, would decimate virtually all life on the planet. For comparison, the meteor that ended the dinosaurs' reign was less than 10 miles in diameter. However, advocates of the hypothesis suggest that the comet that struck Earth was likely an airburst event, rather than a direct impact, meaning the comet broke up into large fragments before exploding as it entered Earth's atmosphere, effectively delivering a shotgun blast to the planet, rather than a single cosmic bullet. So what would a catastrophe of this scale look like on Earth's surface? According to hypothesis supporters, it was a veritable end of days. Estimates place fragments of the comet impacting the North American ice sheet somewhere in what is today the Midwest of the United States, or perhaps further north in what is now Canadian territory. The hypothesis suggests that such an impact, if any, would have almost instantly vaporized and melted vast amounts of glacial ice, which would have resulted in megafloods spilling out from the ice shelf and making their way down the continental U.S. on a biblical scale. For the prehistoric, widely spread Clovis civilization mentioned earlier, this would have resulted in large-scale destruction and death. Additionally, if there were multiple impacts, including on land masses, it is said that much of the crust would be superheated from the sudden pressures, liquefying it into molten rock, before scattering it over great distances as it falls back down to Earth. A literal rain of fire. Because of this, it is stated that massive wildfires broke out across continents, North America in particular, wiping out a considerable amount of vegetation, wildlife, and people, leaving many places in the world drowned and burned. But this would not be the end of such terrifying simultaneous disasters. With so much material projected into the atmosphere from the impacts, along with so much life burned on the surface, particulates would then have blotted out the sun, according to the hypothesis narrative, a cosmic impact winter, causing drought conditions and the Earth's warming trend to take a hard 180, plummeting average global temperatures by as much as 10 to 18 degrees Fahrenheit in places of the Northern Hemisphere. Something both advocates and skeptics of the hypothesis do agree on is the possibility of glacial meltwater rapidly spilling into the Atlantic Ocean, raising sea levels to submerge 10 million square miles of coastline, and disrupting vital, climate-stabilizing currents that cycle warm and cold waters around the planet. The scene laid out is one that paints a vivid apocalyptic picture that drastically changed life on Earth moving forward. The impact and its subsequent conditions are said to have contributed to the extinction of megafauna populations, along with flourishing human civilizations, like the Clovis people in North America. For those who survived, they would endure a 1,300-year return to Ice Age temperatures. Humans and animals starved due to reduced resources, and for some supporters of the impact theory, there is a belief that the rapid onset of the Younger Dryas caused by the impact ended flourishing advanced civilizations worldwide, effectively setting humanity's development back to square one, changing the course of history and creating the world that we now live in today. With all of this said, such an extreme and influential cataclysm must have evidence given the scale of destruction proposed. Impact theory advocates claim to be making progress on this front. When we think of cosmic impacts on Earth, one of the first questions that comes to mind for most is, where is the crater? So where are the craters left behind from the Younger Dryas impact, if any exist? As mentioned earlier, impact hypothesis supporters believe much of the damage was caused by airbursts of comet fragments as they entered the Earth's atmosphere. Like the 1908 Tunguska airburst event, which leveled 80 million trees and sparked huge wildfires in Siberia, after a bolide exploded 6 miles above the Earth's surface. Still, in 2018, advocates pointed to a 19-mile crater underneath the Greenland ice sheet as a possible scar left from the event. However, in 2022, carbon dating was conducted on the material from the crater and found it to be over 50 million years old. Other craters have been discovered over the years which hold greater promise, such as the Karolina crater in Quebec, Canada, located in the port of St. Lawrence. Discovered by Canadian authorities in 2001, core samples tested from the crater yielded a tempting date of 12,900 years at the earliest, though further testing is needed, as the oldest possible date could be as long ago as 470 million years, a far cry from any possibility of being considered a recent impact event. Yet another Canadian crater exists as a point of interest for impact supporters in Lake Ontario, just on the border with the United States. Also believed by researchers to potentially date to around 12,800 years ago, the Charity Shoals crater, like the Karolina crater in Quebec, could be much older, so again, nothing concrete can be decided with these possible impact sites as of yet. Further south in the continental U.S., more signs of potential impact scarring are pointed out by advocates. Referred to as the Carolina Bays, these elliptical-shaped, water-filled pits in the Earth's surface were first spotted during aerial surveys in the 1930s over the eastern seaboard, namely, as the name implies, the Carolinas, though many have also been discovered in the state of Georgia. Contemporary explanations were everything between sinkholes to ocean currents, and even the activity of massive prehistoric ancestors of the North American beaver. It wasn't until the 1950s when North Carolina geologist William Prouty claimed with contention that the formations were likely caused by a single cosmic impact event over 12,000 years ago. Prouty unknowingly supporting the impact hypothesis before it would gain mainstream attention some 50 years later. Today, impact hypotheses contend that the bays may have been directly caused by the Younger Dryas Impact's ejecta, launched from an impact site in the north. While speculation on potential impact sites is a given when searching for cosmic debris falling to Earth, the main focus of the Younger Dryas Impact hypothesis has required just as much, if not more, literal digging. A geological record of sorts, the black mat, as it is called, is a thin layer of dark, ancient sediment in the soil that dates back to around the start of the Younger Dryas. There are other such sediment layers which are commonly found all over the world, typically comprised of rotted organic matter in wet environments. However, there are other microscopic elements that exist within these mats that catch impact theorists' attention the most, like nanodiamonds. These nano-sized diamonds were first discovered following nuclear detonations by world powers during the arms race after World War II. Similar pressures and forces caused by nuclear bombs are also produced during these cosmic impacts. One Younger Dryas black mat location, in Murray Springs, Arizona, presents a thin, dark sediment layer dated to 12,800 years and is said to contain these nanodiamonds, right below the mat layer. In addition, melted spherules are also presented in these layers as impact evidence, the spherules forming when a cosmic impact vaporizes rocks, which are then lifted into the atmosphere, before falling back to Earth as molten rain, before ultimately solidifying. Other black mat elements that receive mentions of interest are milk glass, soot, charcoal, carbon spherules, iridium, and platinum, common byproducts of cosmic impacts, but one, in the case of the Younger Dryas black mats, that skeptics have explained away as being remnants of harmless space dust and debris that fall to Earth every day. Currently, the debate surrounding the exact cause of the abrupt cooling period of the Younger Dryas continues at the time of this production. Many skeptics have come out in opposition over the years, arguing against the lack of sufficient data to support such a hypothesis, referring to it as a sort of pseudoscience. However, this has not deterred numerous experts from joining the search for much-needed data, which could in the near future lead to a breakthrough. These supporting experts have grouped together in self-funded organizations like the COMET Research Group, whose website provides a general yet detailed breakdown of the impact hypothesis. According to their site and social media accounts, they are in the midst of planning an expedition to Greenland, where, despite evidence to the contrary, it is believed that further exploration and sampling will uncover new, useful data. So, at least for now, the Younger Dryas Impact hypothesis remains just that, a hypothesis. But a hypothesis that implies a disaster so great, so recent in our planet's epic history, and in our own as a collective species, that if proven true, would completely rewrite what we thought we knew about the struggles our late Ice Age ancestors endured. For the time being, we can only imagine such a terrifying sight to behold. However, perhaps one day soon, speaking in terms of probability, we will no longer have to imagine such a terrifying scenario, making our understanding of previous impact events, real or hypothesized, that much more important. Important because one day, if proven true, may turn a hypothesis into a reality, spurring stargazers to intensify their efforts in searching for the existential threats from the black of space that place us at their mercy every single day. A mercy our ancient ancestors may have come to understand all too well, potentially making the Younger Dryas Impact a true horror in history. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing, especially if you are a new viewer. And feel free to leave us a comment if you have any shocking historical suggestions you would like seen covered on the channel. Thanks for watching Horrors in History.